This is the Diverse Leaders Conversation Podcast, the only podcast for diverse leaders and founders. With your hosts, Dawn Morton-Young and Kat Wildman. The Diverse Leaders Conversation Podcast, starting up and rising up against the odds.
Hi, and welcome to the Diverse Leaders Conversation Podcast. I'm Kat Wildman.
And I am Dawn Morton-Young, and we are here with Lauralee Whyte, which I'm really excited about. Kat introduced me to you, and we are all in the Diversity X group, which is an amazing group of diverse founders led by Kevin Withane. So little plug for Kevin. And we've kind of just hit it off, really. So I would try and explain what it is that you do now and where you've come from, but I think it's better for you to kind of introduce yourself and let everybody know who you are, what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to say, like, we've more than hit it off. Like, we have an actual WhatsApp group, and you know, like, this is like a beautiful relationship that we have now beyond our like podcast experience. So yeah, thank you for having me. I am delighted to be here with you two. My name is Lauralee Whyte, and I am the founder of Spectrum Speakers. Spectrum Speakers is a diverse speaker agency. We work with talent who come from different backgrounds but aren't necessarily talking about diversity. So looking at bridging the inclusion gap for conferences and events. My background is I've kind of worked in events for the last 20 years, thereabouts, something like that. And in various guises, kind of anything from like experiential marketing and product launches, and then kind of nicely fell into the speaking industry, where I was a director for a previous company.
Thanks, Lauralee. So if we were to ask you about your diverse background, you know that on this program or on this podcast, we speak to people with many different diverse traits. Some of those are intersectional. And so we do like to get everyone to kind of say how they identify. So yeah, would you like to tell us how you identify?
I identify as a Black female.
Okay. So being a Black female, a Black woman, how do you think that your journey has differed in comparison to maybe people that might not have your protected characteristics?
Yeah, it's really interesting because, you know, there have definitely been challenges. I don't know if I would say setbacks. But the challenges, as I think most Black females especially experience, you know, like microaggressions in the workplace, and, you know, kind of cultural differences in so much as, you know, I've always worked hard and I've always been recognized for the work that I've done, but have always hit a ceiling for things like, you know, you need to raise your profile in the industry, or you need to be presenteeism, you need to be seen to be doing X, Y, Z. And I'm like, why do I have to do that if you've already acknowledged that I'm doing great work? And, you know, and if that's the kind of barrier to my further success, then why don't you invest in the training to get me there? So those are the types of things that I have experienced time and time again in different workplaces. However, I appreciate that there have also been some privileges in so much as, you know, I think being a Black woman in some situations affords you more privilege than being a Black man, especially, you know, how you are viewed by other men, by, you know, other white men in authority. You're not seen as so much of a threat. So I think that helps to open doors more for us, or for myself, or, you know, women of color, than for men in some situations, in some industries.
And I know Kat's going to want to jump in a second, but I just wanted to just touch on what you said. I just wanted to make a comment, sorry. So, yeah, because you spoke about that whole thing about them saying that you need to raise your profile and basically to be, you know, more visible. And that's, it's things like that that are the reasons why I set up my coaching and mentoring service. So because, you know, you may be saying to people there's opportunities for you to get forward in the business, but things like that, nuances like that, being more visible, being seen in the workplace, putting yourself forward, because of the things that come with us as diverse people, that's sometimes very much easier said than done. And who shows them how to do that and how to put themselves forward in that way, when we've always been taught to kind of sit back and wait to be called, wait for your turn, wait to be acknowledged. And so that skill set and that thing that you spoke about in terms of needing training to be able to get there is exactly where organizations need to be investing. Because yes, it's true, you do need to raise your profile, as do most people. Maybe we do more than others, because it's almost as if we have to prove that we are as good as the person next to us. But you do have to do that. But it's a skill set that a lot of people that don't come from our backgrounds learn in school. They learn because of the type of schools that they go to, because of their peer groups, because of their parents' jobs, because of the colour of their skin and the culture that comes with that. And so it's almost like we're having to play catch up, and they're telling us catch up, but not giving us the tools to enable us to be able to do that. So, yeah, I just wanted to make that comment.
I wanted to ask, we can be guilty of always looking at diversity as in terms of barriers, but actually, do you feel like your characteristics have given you any advantages, or what advantages have you experienced because of, you know, who you are and how you identify?
Do you know what? That's a good question. I would say, in short, no. Not really. I think there have been situations where it's worked in my favor in terms of tokenism. Like, look, we have a black girl on our senior leader team. It's like, come on, get to the front for the photos. And you know, and that, you know, there might have been opportunities that I have been awarded, you know, to kind of to show a certain thing as opposed to by my skill set. I don't fully believe that, because I know that I've worked really hard, and I've everything that I have achieved has been, you know, because of the work that I've done and the work that I put in. I believe that. I don't know if that has always been the sole reason why I have achieved in certain instances. It's a really good question, and I'm really trying to think. I think I would say that the only benefit that it affords me is that I get to a certain point when I've, like, you know, started a new job, or I'm, you know, in a new office environment, where I can be myself a little bit more. And because potentially Black women are recognised as being a lot more outspoken in certain situations, it does get to a point where people are like, oh, okay, that's just Lauralee being Lauralee. Whereas, you know, maybe some, you know, like white women or white men might not get away with that same type of outspokenness, because it you know, it might be seen as a bit abrupt or a little bit boisterous. Yeah. But that's me,
interesting.
Like, really
Dawn and I were
trying
talking
hard.
about
Yeah,
me and Dawn were talking about that last night with the negative lens. Yeah. Do you want to say more about that, Dawn?
Yeah, so what we were talking about was that whole being known as the kind of the aggressive black woman, or just a woman in general. It doesn't always just apply to, it's either they're hysterical, you're being sensitive, you find those sorts of words. And I was saying that for a lot of it, and I can talk about for black people in general, 9 times out of 10, we're not being aggressive at all. This is our way. Does that make sense? And in our spaces and within our cultures, then people are not always going to take offense to the way that we speak. And I said it's really about the fact that they don't know us. And I said I think the analogy I gave to Kat was, when white people will have animals, they'll have dogs, just say for example, or cats. And if a cat all of a sudden jumps up and is aggressive, they accept that as the way of the cat. Does that make sense? It doesn't mean that they think that their cat is rotten to the core, or, they want to throw it in the bin. If a dog chews the furniture, they accept that as a characteristic of a dog. What I'm saying is, if you got to know how we were, you would know that some of us, we have a very vivacious, if you go to the islands, even if you go to Africa, to West Africa, there is a way that they're speaking where even I'm like, oh, are they arguing? Or is everything okay over there? But it's just a way. But I think, again, it's about they're more trying to get us to fit into the mold of what they see as normality, rather than saying there are different people with different ways about them, with different, and I think that's, and even if we take the black out of the equation, we've seen it even with Irish people, with Scottish people, with anybody that's kind of outside of the mold of Englishness. That was the kind of the conversation that we was having yesterday. So it's funny that you say that you've had it accepted that, it's just the way that normally
you
is.
hit the nail on the head, in so much as once people have got to know me, I'm probably, I'm probably like not as what's the word? I don't know, like not necessarily like super loud, but I can be quite dry. And my face defies what I might want to say. So, if I'm not impressed, my face says I'm not impressed, and that just once you realize that that's just me, there's nothing that can be done about it. So I think, as I said, that people have got used to that, but it's definitely always been a bit of a shock to the system the first time it comes out. It's a bit like, oh, and I've always been very mindful that I have to get my feet well under the table, nice and cozy before I can let the mask slip a little bit. But even that in and of itself is something that you're prepared for as a child before you enter the workplace. This was something that, my parents used to say to me, basically, you can't be like you are at home at work. Like it's not, or at school. It's not, no. Well, I wasn't allowed to be like that at school. It's not accepted. It's frowned upon. Here is a safe space, in and among your friends is a safe space, but out there it's not safe for you. So here is your mask, put it on, wear it at all times, work really hard, be quiet, drink water, and mind your business. And that's pretty much like most people that I know, like most black people especially, that's the training that they've had at home.
And we were taught to code switch.
Yeah.
Now, do you say the same thing to your kids? Like both of you, I know you've both got kids. Do you say those same things to your kids because you've seen how useful that advice was?
I don't think I've said it. They have learnt it by themselves. So for my daughters, they will come back and they'll say something like they were somewhere and one of the sisters would have said to the other one something that I guess might be typically black, or got into an accent or done something. And they're like, oh, and I didn't realize that the white man was standing there, and I haven't said anything to them, but they don't feel comfortable being themselves. And I think that our parents taught us that in the home, but they didn't need to. We would have found out soon enough, as soon as we went out, that it wasn't necessarily, the space wasn't given for us to be ourselves. I don't know if how you feel about that, Lauralee, with your daughter you've got.
Yeah, I have a daughter. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I in hindsight, I feel like that training was useful. I feel like yes, we would have found out for ourselves, but I think perhaps knowing that helped us to get ahead quicker. With my daughter, to be fair, if she comes home and she's like, "No, fam," blah 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 blah, I'm like, we don't talk like that, just because I don't talk like that. And it's really difficult, because I'm not 100% there yet. I have 30 odd years of conditioning within me that sort of says, no, that's wrong, and you shouldn't speak like that, and you won't be taken seriously if you speak like that. So that's something that I need to shed and I need to deal with. But equally, I know that a lot of the time she's trying stuff on. She's trying different voices on. She's trying different ways of being. So I need to give more space for that. But yeah, hands up, I'm guilty.
I mean, that's really interesting though, isn't it? Because it's part of your, that is deep within you from your childhood and your experiences, and you want to pass it on to your daughter and be like, no, we don't speak like that, we have to speak like this, and we've got to toe the line, and you've got to sit quietly, obviously not to a race extent, because I haven't ever experienced that, but exactly the same with my daughter. She can't be rolling around on the floor being ridiculous, shouting her head off. She is a huge ball of very loud energy and a lot of opinions. And I feel myself
someone.
I have the similar traits from my family, not because of my race or ethnicity, because of my gender. They're just like, girls, do not do that. They try to hammer me, squash me in any way, get me into some sort of box, and I rebelled the whole way and ended up with a terrible relationship with my parents, because they were like, this is not the daughter we ordered. What have we got here? Because I was like,
where are the receipts?
Exactly. But I've got one as well, and I'm so conscious of I'm going to take your advice on that, Lauralee, and I'm gonna dress it up as not dress it up, that sounds bad, but that it's safety. Not everyone will accept you the way that we accept you and love you for exactly who you are. You've got to do some pretending in this world. So in terms of assimilating now, how much would you say that you have to assimilate? If we were to quantify it somehow in percentages or amount of time of day in your working life as a CEO and founder, how much would you say you're still assimilating consciously today?
Hardly. I think I'm because I don't have anyone to answer to. I can be myself, and I'm very comfortable with the knowledge that if somebody doesn't like me or for who I am, then they're not going to work with me, and actually I'm probably not going to enjoy working with them either. It's not going to be beneficial. So I'm a lot more comfortable being myself. Of course, there are situations, if I'm going to meet a bank, then I'll be conscious of what I'm wearing. And I may be a little bit conscious of how I say certain things, but not overly. To be honest, I'm a lot more comfortable in my own skin and who I am and what I stand for that to be as much of an issue as it used to be.
Brilliant. What about you, Dawn?
I think I agree with Lauralee in that being a founder, you kind of don't have to, and especially with this new working from home culture, you're not really around people as much. So, if you've got an appointment, but I do think that I do, and I know we were speaking about this the other day, isn't it, with the whole thing with Her Majesty the Queen dying, and me feeling as if I couldn't express myself as I wanted to on, you know, LinkedIn. You know, those, you know, I do a Monday video every Monday, and Monday gone, it was supposed to be about that, and I chickened out. And I chickened out not because I felt that I was wrong, but because I just thought, if I do this, the people that are on my page, would they even give me the grace or the understanding to be expressing about someone that they may hold in very high regard in this way? And how will that affect my reputation in the work that I do? And how will that affect my business? And so the assimilation is different. Does that make sense? So I kind of do, and you guys know that I'm a very open, very direct, and it's not that if somebody engaged me in conversation and asked me a question about it, I would 100% say what I felt tactfully as I could. But I just thought that,
and
for
I think
me,
in that situation, sorry, no, carry on, Dawn.
No, you go.
No, I was just going to say, in that situation, you don't owe anyone your opinion. You know, there are lots of opinions out there. And as you said, had somebody engaged with you to say, what do you think about this? You know, you would have said how you felt, and no doubt tactfully, but honestly. Because the same, I've been thinking, oh, do I weigh in on this? You know, do I kind of make my opinion really clear? And similarly to you, I just thought, actually, I don't need to. You know, I don't have to speak on everything. And also, there is some level of uncertainty still for me about how I feel about that whole situation. You know, there's this figurehead, you know, the person that we've all been kind of taught to look up to, and, you know, largely just like this really sweet looking old lady, you know, like just for me, in terms of like how I've been brought up to respect my elders and all that kind of stuff. But I'm still very aware of what she represents and what she has allowed to continue under her reign. And that doesn't sit well with me either. But I'm not gathered enough to have a fully solid opinion on it. That's how I feel.
I said, and I've told this story. Told this story to Kat yesterday, and I think for me, I think I'm the same as you. She's always been the queen. You know, like, you know how we say in the Caribbean, she never do me nothing. As in, she hasn't personally done anything to me. She's been there as, like, you know, the leader of the country. She always looks lovely. She looks like, but you're right. Mourning somebody is very different for me. And what was the clincher was having the conversation with my mum, where my mum said to me, well, you know, I remember coming to this country and we were told that this was our home, and that because the Queen was the head of the Commonwealth, it was our home as much as anybody's. And then arriving here and being chased down the road in Ladbroke Grove by the Teddy boys with bats, being called every name under the sun, being refused entry into restaurants to eat, having to squash up all together with other families to live because the landlords purposefully put up the rent for Black people. And she said, but you know what? That is not my problem. My problem is that this Queen who invited us and told us this was our home never used her platform to speak about it. And then she said, not even when Stephen Lawrence was murdered. And for me, that's my mum, and that's the clincher. She's the reason I'm here. My grandmother is the reason that I'm here in this country, and we are still struggling with the same things. And then, yes, the person actually who should have been standing up for us said nothing. And that's why I don't know how to feel about that situation. And maybe that's what I would have said on the video that I chickened out from doing. Yeah.
It seems like a good time to talk about Black History Month then. So on that topic of opinions that you hold, but you feel maybe like career limiting, personally too much of a risk to ever say to anybody unless you like really, really know that nothing bad is going to happen to you. Like that that is a terrible situation for authenticity, right? You know, everyone's going on about authenticity constantly, but it's like, you can be authentic as long as you're ready for the absolute backlash that will come when you say something against the norm, or when you give out one of your opinions that is not massively palatable to, you know, the majority. So
are you
in terms of
outing
Black
me?
History Month,
What have you
no,
said,
I'd never do that,
Lauralee? What
Lauralee.
have you said?
No, I'm only joking. No, absolutely. I'm kind of, yeah.
Do you know what? It got me thinking so much. When we had our conversation about Black History Month, I had never thought of it like the trauma that it is. Like, it is a traumatic month for so many people. And I'd always been used to it as a celebration of, you know, Ghanaian cuisine, or, you know, the fashion, the history, the contributions, and looking at it like a celebration and oh wow. But actually it's Black History Month, and we're glossing over like some of the main parts of Black history when we celebrate it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Like, you know, I understand the sentiment behind awareness days in general, but I think they have become tokenistic. Like, personally, I do. You know, I think we need to find a way to be inclusive and celebrate everyone's differences in a really meaningful and long-term way, like with a long-term strategy. You know, we kind of like go from year to year and pick out, you know, Black History Month. And also, you know, I want to say, like, Black History Month has been around for a long time, and, you know, in and amongst that, we've got, you know, Take Your Dog to Work Day, and, you know, wash one side of your hair day. Like, it's a bit silly, but I find it interesting that of all of the months, you know, Black History and Autism Awareness Month, and now we share a month. Now, look, you know, there's enough months out there for everybody. I feel like I don't think August has got a dedicated month.
No, I'm trying to. No, I don't think so.
Yeah, it
I
kind of
didn't know
feels
that
like,
actually.
oh,
So that's news for me.
yeah,
Is this a
look,
new thing
God,
then?
I think it's in the last couple of years. But yeah, you know, look, everyone deserves to be celebrated, and highlighted, and, you know, especially, you know, and represented. But it just doesn't feel very authentic. It feels like lots of corporations are jumping on the bandwagon for, you know, additional kind of corporate branding opportunities, but they aren't actually, they're not really contributing. You know, Black History Month, Pride, International Women's Day, those are the times of the year when I have sometimes really insulting offers for people to speak. You know, I think if as a, you know, especially for sort of big corporations, you know, it's like, you've got the budget. Like last week, you know, you had somebody come in and talk about well-being. That's a fantastically, you know, very important topic. But, like, as is Black History Month, like they're both important, as is International Women's Day, you know. And we're not necessarily talking huge budgets here, but we're talking better than a couple of £100.
Yeah.
And, you know, actually that gesture in and of itself is counterintuitive to what you're supposed to be trying to do, to elevate, you know, to elevate different voices, and, you know, and to show that there is a place for everybody. It's like, well, even the same person who, you know, has great value, you didn't offer them that fee last week. So
Yeah.
yeah, so
And
just,
you know
yeah,
what,
going
for
back.
me, oh sorry, I was just going to say,
No,
adding to what you
go
said
for it.
about the whole month thing, who was the person that said that Black History Month needed to be in October? When was that? Why do they not put our Black History Month with the American and Caribbean Black History Month in February? Because then we would have more traction. it would be seen by a greater number of people when we're talking about blacks in the UK. Instead, they've stuck us by ourselves in October, months apart from when the rest of the world is celebrating black excellence. I just don't get it. Why? Who's the person? Who do we talk to?
Maybe that should be what it would be called, Black Excellence Month instead of Black History, just because we don't it's really important that schools learn about Black history, but it shouldn't be in one month. They shouldn't just learn about Black history in February. It should be throughout the curriculum. It should be
it should. Yeah,
that
100%.
that whole situation is the whole thing about it being in schools of and this is the month where we look at Black. What? Come on! It's not a niche subject. It's the world,
especially
as it is.
in inner city schools, where 1 in 3 pupils at least are from an ethnic minority. I just don't. Why would that be your time that you tell them about themselves?
Surely that's embarrassing for the teachers. Surely that is embarrassing for the teachers looking at your class being like, okay, class, now we're going to look at Black history. And the kids are like, what? Why? Why do we get a month of the year where we focus on this? It's ridiculous, isn't it?
When you don't really exist the rest of the time.
And,
it's like what Lauralee says. How much have your inquiries gone up for speakers, particularly speakers from Black backgrounds, now coming into Black History Month than what you had in, say, June?
Oh, they come in October. No matter how much I say, I put out comms, the requests will only come in October, last week of September tops. My comms start in July.
That is interesting. And how does that differ from International Women's Day, would you say? Have you noticed a difference?
On the whole, it's the same, I would say.
It's like they just remember that they've got this thing that they've got to, this box that they have to tick.
Exactly. And that's why, as I said, especially from my perspective, and I can see how reactive people are to it as opposed to kind of actually, wanting to be proactive and inclusive. It's like, it's that time again. This is something that I have to do. But one of the other things I wanted to talk about, as part of that conversation that we had, Kat, Black history, it's important, but there are still so many things that are relevant and necessary to understand about Black culture today that a lot of people do not know, and that a lot of people don't talk about, or refuse to acknowledge. And that's what we need to be focusing on for all cultures and, all kind of celebrations. And with, International Women's Day, we on the whole, we talk about what women are doing in the moment. What are women doing right now? How are women trailblazing and, and contributing over and above men in some ways? But it's like, well, whereas Black history, we're looking back at the contributions that people made and often actually weren't acknowledged for at the time. And sometimes it does feel really sad and quite traumatic as a Black person. It's like, look at all of the things that these people that my ancestors have achieved that they were not awarded for at the time. And, not only not awarded for, they were, somebody else took credit for their work.
They were exploited.
Or they were killed for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the time for me, it feels really sad, and not that celebratory. I think, obviously the intention is, and, when we're all sharing food and all that kind of stuff, it's great. But I just think more awareness and planning around what these kind of awareness celebrations look like throughout the year, and how we can, be more conscious of everybody's cultures and differences. And everything that needs to be celebrated long term and not just in a minute.
Yeah, I wanted to ask something which is not about Black History Month, but just so we know that you're a founder, but you also spoke about that you reached to director level in your previous corporate career while she was working for the man. So I just wanted to find out a bit more about your journey in that regard. So how did you find your journey to board level? Because, you know, that is one of my ultimate baby is to, you know, address the disparity that we have at board level for all of the different groups that we have, you know, minority groups, sorry. So, yeah, how was your journey and how did you find it once you were there?
That's a really interesting question. So I would say the last sort of 4 or 5 roles, I was sort of like, you know, head of my department, which was great and felt, you know, even though there were challenges, for the most part, I really did feel like, you know, it was deserved and it was on my merit, and a lot of effort was put in to support me in the kind of day-to-day stuff, as I said, not necessarily so much in like leadership training or, you know, or kind of being more visible or, you know, kind of building your personal brand, that kind of stuff that wasn't offered to me, but, you know, very kind of practical training on, you know, like finance, like, you know, how to, you know, do special formulas in Excel and stuff like that. Yeah, so that was worked pretty well for me for the most part, but I always felt excluded from the very kind of senior level conversations. You know, even though there are lots of people that I was on par with title wise, I didn't feel very included so much in higher level conversations. It was always like, okay, we've had this discussion. This is what we want you to now implement. And not to say that, you know, that I couldn't share any opinions on that, but it was very much, well, you know, this is what we decided now. Like it's in a Google slide. So
it's almost like they let you in, but not quite in enough.
Yeah, definitely. So I very much always felt a ceiling, and it's actually quite hard in some ways, because, you know, when I reached director level in the last place, it did very much feel like a chess move. You know, it was. I was doing all of that work anyway. Initially, I was kind of offered the role without much of a salary increase. And I was like, no, that's not happening. You know, because it was like, yeah, but this
good for you.
Looks good. And I was like, well, yeah, you know, I got a salary increase. It wasn't quite what I wanted, but it was, you know, a lot closer than what I was originally offered. But again, I never really felt that involved in decisions. Like conversations would happen and it would be like, anyway, we've done this, which is like the opposite to what we talked about, you know. Okay, that's okay. So yeah, so, you know, unfortunately, for them, like, and this is going to sound really, really big headed, but they lost out on talent because, you know, I'm just like, I am not just in it for the money. I'm in it because I want to be a part of something and I want to build something. And if I don't feel really included in that process, then I'm going to tap out. You know, it's like being in in a really bad relationship, you know, like if it's not working, you're just like, nah, I'm gonna tap out.
So we had someone say something so similar recently, where they were just like, it's that really, it kind of feels intangible, doesn't it? Like Did you do that on purpose? Like, why have you had this discussion? And did you have that moment of like, shall I say anything? Shall I not say anything? What, like, did you have that moment? And if so, what did you decide to do? Did you decide to face it head on or not?
I did. You know, I would talk about some things and say, like, you know, like I would sort of say, look, I don't necessarily agree with, you know, this outcome, and you know, I would be made to feel as if, you know, my opinion was being considered, but as I said, it already wasn't. It was like, no, this is already a done deal, it's set in stone. We'll just, you know, smile and nod at you. But yeah, after that, I was like, why should I keep giving you the opportunity to not listen to me? You know, like, thankfully,
I love that. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, thankfully, I do know my worth in that sense. Like, that's despite how some you know, some managers have been towards me, and, you know, as I said, like, not offering me you know, the correct financial compensation, things that I've always known that, yeah, that I go above and beyond, and that they know that too, because, you know, whenever I've had appraisals and all that kind of stuff, like, everything is tick, 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 tick. You know, your colleagues, you know, your managers think that you're this, you know, your people that are in your team, you know, feel really supported. And, like, you know, I've always had great 360 feedback. So for me,
yeah.
It's like, well, what's missing then? Like, because you've just told me that everything's working.
Yeah. And it's weird. It's that I don't even know if it's conscious. And that is the scary thing. So, for example, like you asking that question, I'm at the top of my game in all of these things. I'm doing what you want me to do, but you're still not promoting me. So could you put that into words? Would you say, oh, it's because she's a black woman, or it's because she's a woman, or it's, do you see what, I don't even think they consciously think it, but it's almost like it's something innate in them that says this person can't be on the same level as me or beyond that level. And that is what the scary thing is. Because if something is innate, and I know, because obviously, you know, I work with mindset and all of that kind of thing, unless somebody does a very targeted program of reprogramming you, which happens all the time, you know, or you decide that you want to work on that particular program, it won't change. And I think that that's the scary thing about it. And we'll be forever kicking down doors and getting into spaces where people don't really want us to be. And I've really turned this podcast into a morbid moment. But yeah.
I don't think it's forever. I think that what is going to happen is that talent, like you, like Diversity X, like everybody, like all this new talent who's just going, enough of this nonsense. Like, you have had your chance and you have blown it. I think there's enough talent now that has, like, mustered up the courage and bravery and found that support that they needed to be able to start their own business. And there's a new generation of businesses who are led by people with protected characteristics, whatever those may be, who will not have that innate bias in them. And also, I do think, like, I hate targets. I hate targets. I hate that there has to be targets, because I think it is just wrong, and I think it's going to be a sacrificial generation who go up there because of targets, because they are forced into those situations because of targets, and they will have that feeling of, like, you don't want me here, I'm a target, like,
And
this
they're
is
also
terrible, I'm
not
going to make the
prepared.
best of it.
It's like being set up to fail in some instances.
Yeah, exactly. But a generation down the line, that will lead to, hopefully, if it carries on like it is with the head of steam it's got now, it's going to lead to a more diverse leadership across the board in every industry, in the leadership of our country, in our healthcare systems, in our schools, and then the hope is that it will be organic because you'll have those champions at the top who are looking for you and going, well, why did you not give that opportunity to Lauralee? Or why did you not give that opportunity to Dawn or Kat or Kevin or whoever it is? It's like, well, no, she's not like that. She's amazing. Like, championing you from the inside, rather than constantly having to like karate kick the doors down like Charlie's Angels and be like, I'm here, move over, Jeffrey. I'm sitting at the board table.
I agree with you, as long as those businesses that have been created by people from protected characteristics become bigger businesses. At the moment, a vast majority of those businesses are micro businesses or SMEs, but small SMEs, and the big businesses are still headed up by kind of middle upper class white men with a board level that looks exactly the same as them. And the nearest person of color or female manager is a good number of seats below. So it's the incorporation of of different people at board level within those big businesses. We can go away and we can create our own tables, but until these kind of larger companies aren't dominating every industry at the moment, we're still going to have challenges. There's still going to be a challenge.
Like those big businesses getting forced to declare their race and ethnicity pay gaps, to have 50-50 shortlists at interview level, like those sorts of targets, which are awful, and they feel awful, and they feel awful for the people who are on those lists, and they feel awful for the people who are looking for the people, and they feel awful for everyone because it shouldn't have to be in place. But we do kind of have to like have enough talent coming to the door in order to be able to get those few through, and then those boards will hopefully be less homogenous. There we go. I want to end on a positive. I want to end with hope and all.
Oh no, I'm coming. We're coming. We're gonna, because we always have to ask. So, Lauralee, thank you so much, first of all, for coming. It's been like the most amazing conversation, and I know that we could go for I don't know how long. And I'm actually thinking about, and we'll talk about this later, I'm thinking about in February next year us having a Black History Month roundtable in coincidence with the States' Black History Month. So some sort of panel, some sort of question, and I think it should maybe be about, does the UK take Black people seriously? Because I don't know why we're in October with Autism Awareness Month, because I will champion both months and both sets of people, because, my thing with the disability and all the rest of it, but I don't agree that either should be fighting. The autism rates, or the rates of people that have been diagnosed with autism, have gone up, so much over the last, they deserve the awareness to be on them. Black people are still being marginalized in this country. They are still being killed by the police. We deserve to have a month on our own. And I think that, my brain is going, but I'm just really thinking whether it could be a nice little panel discussion for us to have in February. Anyway, so great, yeah. So my last question was, if you had two questions, if you had a piece of advice for an organization when it comes to including people from diverse backgrounds or people of color specifically, particularly at senior leadership level, what would you say to them?
What I would say the same thing that I was told, like, start networking and spending time with people outside of the networks that you're already a part of. There are so many successful, people of color, there are so many successful disabled people, people of different genders, and just start spending time with people that you don't know. And the only way to kind of authentically include people is to connect with them on a really normal and genuine level. That's it. You can do all of the courses, or you can send all of the HR people to do all of the courses. But unless you're actually doing the work yourself from the top, it's never going to land.
Love that. And my last question is, if you was to advise your younger self or just another person that is heading on that leadership or founder journey, where they're going to be a CEO or they're going to be a CEO in corporate, what advice would you give them in terms of being able to navigate some of the things that could come up for them on that journey?
It's that's a really difficult one, because I guess I would want them to make sure that space is safe enough for them to be in. So many people push through in spaces that weren't designed for them, and then become separated and disengaged from who they are or who they want to be. So sometimes, they may rise to success at the detriment of their own happiness. So by all means, try and open people up and try and change people's minds. But I would just say no if there is a point where you're literally trying to bash a square peg into a round hole, and look after your well-being first and foremost. Like, nothing is worth more than that.
And we love well-being here, don't you, Kat?
Yeah, I'd like a bit of well-being in my life at the moment.
Wouldn't we all? Spa day.
I say we do a spa day.
I think we should do a spa day.
Thank you so much, Lauralee. And I'm sure we'll be seeing you soon.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me.